Geocachomaniacs.
Geo Gearheads.
Welcome to Geo Gearheads. This is a weekly show about geocaching and geolocation games. I'm Chris of the Northwest, along with our illustrious, sometimes illustrated, in fact, tonight he is somewhat illustrated, the captain of the podcast, Daryl W4.
Wow. Okay.
You're welcome.
I think we have to work on our introductions a little bit.
Why?
Either that or I need one of those like hand-drawn filters that we can apply to the feed.
The Take On Me video.
You know, I haven't seen that in so long, but it's been that kind of day.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy few days at work, as I was telling you before the show, but we needed a good laugh. So I went back and found like a 1980s commercial from Highland Appliance out here.
Oh, I remember Highland Appliance.
Uh-huh. Do you remember the international events with the Russian submarine crew? We require jumbo savings.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So I've had to find that one and pass it around to some of my team members and brighten up the day, because everyone was like super stressed out, and that really helps. 50 watts per channel, baby kicks.
Yes. I remember that now.
Go search YouTube if you guys haven't seen it. It's out there. It's the Highland Appliance international sale Russian sub crew or something like that. Yeah. I found it like very first hit, but worth the humorous listen.
Good old commercials from the 80s. There was one. Now this is more 90s, maybe 2000s. Where there's a class trying to learn English. English is the second language.
Oh yeah.
It was a Pepsi commercial, right?
I remember it.
Please. A Pepsi key. No, just Pepsi. Pepsi key. Yes. Anyway, that's the one I remember.
Well, and this is from that era of the Where's the Beef.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Highland one might have been a little later, but not by much. They're all right about that time.
Oh, Where's the Beef? That was a huge one.
Yeah, and they failed when they tried bringing it back, but that doesn't surprise me.
No, it had its moment.
Yep.
You know, though, I have to admit I don't know why we're talking about commercials. Okay, we'll just finish this thought, then we'll move on. Like Flo from the Progressive commercials.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, the AT&T girl and the Toyota girl.
AT&T girl, I don't remember.
Lily? She's, it's the... Anyway.
And I keep going back to the Geico ads as being the closest thing now to the 80s commercials.
Yeah.
Still very different.
Right.
But it's that kind of, irreverent, funny, let's try to get you to pay attention through humor, and whether we actually get our message across is secondary.
Exactly. All you have to do is be able to identify our logo when we pass it in front of you.
Yep. Pretty much.
Okay. Daryl, should we talk about geocaching and geolocation games, or just geolocated commercials?
I think the geolocated commercials might be a bigger hit.
We should do a show totally off of the geocaching scope and just do a show on, pop culture or 80s culture or whatever popped in the 80s.
Yeah, we did some of those for the patrons at one point. We should go back to doing that. like either of us have the time right now.
Yeah, well.
You go to work from home and you get busier and you don't get anything done.
Yeah, tell me about it. Working from home, I tend to work longer because there's not people around me that's saying, "Hey, I got to go. Have a great day." Oh, is it quitting time? Okay. Well, there's no one around me. So, I don't know.
And there's also that, well, the office is only 15 feet away. I can just pop in for a minute and, 2 hours later, it's like, I just want to finish this project.
Yep.
So yeah, the hazards of working from home, which I might add, I don't actually get to do.
I do. And I don't know. It's I enjoy it sometimes, and other times it wears on me. I'm
Yeah.
so fickle.
I would actually rather be going to the office, and I'm very grateful for that routine.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there were a few days where I got to stay home, which I was also grateful for. Try to slow the spread a little bit too. But the dog, hey, you're home. That means you can pay attention to me anytime. Yeah.
It's obviously a weekend. You're taking me for more walks today. No, I'm not.
He's good enough to know that when I'm in this room, it's not a good playtime. The problem is this room really doesn't work so well as the office. And a lot of times I ended up down at the dining room table.
Too much distraction.
Well, yeah. And it's like, if I'm up here, I also have the tendency to, okay, I have to work on this stuff and this stuff. And yeah, it's too hard to concentrate on the work stuff. Not that I don't, just it's easier to get out of this room because this room has been set up for that.
Yeah, I feel guilty that I have two spaces. I have an office space and I have a podcast studio space. Now, in theory, those two spaces could serve the same function, but this podcast spot is not really set up for office. I don't have the desk space.
That's kind of my problem
The
too.
lighting's a little severe, so it's not good for podcast, or not good for officing.
Well, and I keep thinking what I should do is hook the work laptop up to the podcast rig and do my meetings that way.
Mm-hmm.
How bizarre would it be when you're used to people not wearing headsets or anything on Zoom to have someone come in with quality audio?
I know what you mean. I'm doing some webinars for work, and they're basically podcast episodes, right? It's me and another guy talking about IT stuff, and I thought, next one, I'm going downstairs. I'm going to use this microphone. It sounds better.
Yeah, definitely. You've got the tools. Put them to good use. Well, let's get to actual geolocation stuff.
What?
We're not going to talk really so much about the geocaching stuff today because it's another Adventure Lab show.
Adventure Labs. That sounds so adventurous.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Oh.
But here's some background in case you've missed it in the previous shows. Both Chris and I have received our Adventure Lab credits. So we both have Adventure Labs we have to get out. Now, technically, we have until December 15th to set those to public. If we don't, those credits go away and anything we were working on gets, hosed. But there's a little bit more complexity to it in that we have to complete the adventure by Halloween, which is, August 31st, to be, I don't know exactly how to put it, but basically put into a raffle for an additional credit.
Yeah,
so
to be
if
in the running to get another Adventure Lab credit.
So if your Adventure Lab is public by Halloween, then GCHQ is going to select 300 or more of the creators to receive an additional Adventure Lab so they can create another one. But it's going to be based in part with geographic weighting, I think is the way they were putting it. So it's
like what they say. Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be, they're trying to get more quality Adventure Labs, and they haven't said anything about criteria aside from you have to have created the one posted by Halloween and then geographic distribution, and we'll see where we go. So I'm kind of hoping to get mine out by then, and it's actually impacting what I'm going to do. So why don't we start with you, Chris? Well, you've gotten your adventure lab credit a little earlier than I did, like I think by a week. So not much.
Yay,
But
I got one.
yeah, but we've both been, I'm sure, sitting on these thinking, what are we going to do? What do we want to do? So we've had some time to think about it, but I don't know about you. I haven't done anything until I actually got the credit.
I had ideas floating around my head. And some of the credits or some of the adventure labs that have already been placed took those ideas, so I stalked and harassed the owners of them because, obviously they took my idea. Wait, that may not have come out right.
Well,
Anyway,
and one of the
restraining
first
order.
ones that Renee and I were working on for hers was actually very similar to something that someone placed, and we did a video about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens a lot because geocachers have the same kind of thoughts.
Exactly. So I'm trying, I have several themes that I'm thinking about within my city that, I have different ways to go. So the first one I thought is there was a film made using our city as a backdrop. There are several, but the big one is, and Daryl, don't take this name personally. I'm not referring to you, but the movie is called 10 Things I Hate About You, which is
that's not where I thought you were going with that one.
a modern take on the Taming of the Shrew.
Yeah, not a very good one, as I recall.
It wasn't great. I fast forward through all the talking bits just to see the shots of the city. Wait, did that come out right?
Wow.
One of the houses just down the street from me was used in filming, and along with our great stadium high school here. So there are several scenes in that movie that I could take people to as part of an adventure lab. Now, while that's in pop culture, maybe in the Tacoma zeitgeist, you like that word?
Yeah, I'm kind of over that word, actually.
Oh, okay.
That was very 2000.
Yeah. I kind of talked myself out of it. So
see, and I'm thinking you need to create an adventure lab called Zeitgeist. That's very retro. Maybe featuring the commercials from the 80s.
ooh. You are looking for big adventure lab. Okay.
We require adventure lab.
Now,
Anyway.
the other thing that's interesting here in the city of Tacoma that I see on a regular basis is we have salmon statues. They're about 4 or 5 feet across, large metal salmon up on a pole. And they're around. I mean, the one in front of the fire station is painted white with black spots and has a little fire hat and is called Sparky. But there are several of these salmon all over the city. So, Daryl, when you do an adventure lab, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something that you can quickly walk to, and that you go from point A to point B, not necessarily sequentially, but it has an obvious progression to it? Or would you prefer something you have to drive from point A to point B around town?
I don't have a really good preference for that. I really like the ones where you can get out and walk.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to not have a linear experience, but that's because most of the ones I've done really don't lend themselves to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the first ones I did would have been so much easier and so much more enjoyable had they not done it, as linear. If it was just the random, go to this spot, it would have been a much better experience. So, it's, I don't want to say one way or the other because it's, I think, really dependent on the experience. And I'm really looking for that really awesome experience.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to do something like the movie tour that you mentioned that is a quality tour of some of the locations shot for a movie that I really enjoyed.
Yes. And I agree with you. If it was a movie I really enjoyed, I would consider doing it.
But I'm very anxious to do a story, which typically does lend itself to being a linear experience. But doing a story, and we'll talk more about that in a little while, that is enjoyable and not necessarily immersive, but at least gets you into the journey.
Mm-hmm. So there are other categories that have several stops. Like we have several museums in town. We have the LeMay Car Museum. Daryl, this is worth coming to the city for.
I've heard of that one.
It's huge. We have, of course, an art museum and a history museum. We have the Museum of Glass, which is Dale Shahuli.
I was going to ask if it's anything like the one in your hometown.
That is the one in my hometown.
In Toledo?
Oh, no, sorry. That hometown.
Yeah, I was going to say that was what's the name of that?
Libby Owens Ford?
Yeah. It was their museum that they sponsored.
Now, this is hand-blown decorative glass we have here. In fact, there's a hot shop in the museum that you can sign up for time and, blow your own glass. But there's a children's museum, which, when children grow up, then do they go into the Museum of History?
Living history.
Living history. Okay, we have a living history museum as well.
Yeah, when they died, they go into the historic museum.
Okay, gotcha. And we also have a National Guard museum. That one's on our military base. I drive by it. And about a year ago, they had a big banner out front, grand reopening. It's like, oh, great, I want to go. I don't know how to get in there because you have to go on base to do it. And I've asked people who are on base, how do you get to the museum? I don't know. Oh, great. Thanks. Okay.
Check it out because we have one of those at the Selfridge Air National Guard base. And they do have an actual web page that tells you exactly what to do. So in this case, you have to go to the West Gate or whatever it is. I don't remember. You just tell them you're there for the museum. They make you fill out a form. They run a quick check and flag you in. So it doesn't take much, but it's not quite as easy as going to a regular museum.
Right. So we have those, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 museums and a couple others. I found out we have a document museum. I didn't know that. Like, maybe I should go to that. I have found a geocache at the Museum of the Buffalo Soldiers. And did you know 7 buffaloes, the word buffalo 7 times in a sentence is a proper sentence?
Yes, I did. And I don't remember what the full meaning was.
It's talking about, the verb to buffalo is to fool someone. So you could say that buffaloes from Buffalo have buffaloed other buffaloes. So, but if you take out the other word, you could say buffalo, 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 buffalo. And that's a real sentence.
Wow. Okay. Let's move on. My brain's already melted and
we have we have actually 3 sections of very nice waterfront here in the city. Of course, there are a lot of geocaches there. Each one is different. And I thought about, that would be a nice linear walk. Total, if you wanted to do all 3, you're talking like 7 miles, but we could break that up into smaller pieces.
That's probably a little much for a for a adventure lab.
All the points probably within a mile, but it would be linear, right? You're going to have to walk from the start to the finish and then back because you're along the waterfront. Circling back doesn't work so well.
Right. Or do you walk from the back to the front?
Either way.
And with Ubers and such, who knows? Someone might decide that they only take it one way. And kind of my goal with some of that kind of stuff is do the adventure lab one way and you do caches the other way.
Mm-hmm.
If, it lends itself. So do you have any experiences around those locations kind of conceived, or is it
Yes.
still just trying to figure out what you're doing?
Well, I have options in all these areas, and I haven't determined which one. Now, we have one park. It's along the waterfront. It's at the extreme end, and it's the Chinese Reconciliation Park. And it's an interesting concept that I did not know. So, when the railroads came to Tacoma, which is the terminus of the railroad, obviously you can't go much wester than this, or you end up in the water. They had Chinese laborers come in and build the railroads. And
Right.
as they came out to the west and they hit the end, they said, okay, you have to go now. Bye. We don't want you, in our town. Like, well, they did all the work. And so we, created a park saying, you know what, we did the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. Come on back now.
Well, and see, that to me would be an
That
amazing adventure lab in a single park,
hmm
telling the story along the way.
hmm And the story is well laid out on many plaques and information boards. So, and that's a park that my family and I go to walk in. It's not as busy as some of the other parks, and it's right there on the waterfront, and it's beautiful.
Very
And there's
nice.
one geocache in there I haven't found because people keep sitting at the same bench. If you wanted to know that. Okay, I looked. I couldn't find it the last time I was there.
We were doing the adventure lab scouting in Royal Oak.
Mhm.
One of the caches we couldn't find were on the gas meters. This says water meters, but they're gas meters. And we spent a little bit of time looking for it, a lot more than I felt comfortable with, especially because there were cops patrolling. So we were like, well, this is just not really kosher. I'm not liking this at all. We're just going to DNF this and move on.
Yeah.
There's a certain point that you just have to call it.
Cut bait and run.
Yeah.
In the chat, we have the Aussie geocacher. Should we say awesome geocacher as well? See Michelle. That says, I love the history of a town adventures. Coon and Bud did one in Conway, Arkansas last week. Started at the Chris Allen stage, American Idol winner. Wall murals, very cool. What is the term? I believe it's ghost murals.
Yeah, the ones that are faded
that are
out.
faded.
Yeah.
We've got an area downtown that University of Washington Tacoma has come into, and there are ghost murals all over those buildings. So I could do a ghost mural adventure lab.
I love those ghost murals. It would be a lot of fun, and that's an easy one to do as well, because you could conceivably drive by most of those,
right?
If you were mobility challenged or something. So it has that accessibility you don't necessarily get otherwise.
Wet Coaster says he did an adventure lab based on 5 movies and TV shows shot in Abbotsford, BC.
I like that idea too.
Yeah.
So what about the museums? Did you have anything in mind for those, or have you kind of ruled those out already?
No, I haven't. I haven't been in the Children's Museum or the National Guard Museum, but I've been in the others, and they're fabulous. Now that's, and you can walk right up to them. You don't have to pay to get in. Well, you can't really, you could walk up to the car museum, but there's not much to see until you get in, right? Same with the art.
Sure.
The art museum's right downtown, and the history museum is too. I went to those, Daryl, I went to those as a chaperone for my kids when they were in school.
Oh yeah, of course.
So the history museum had a suddenly forgot his name, DB Cooper exhibit. So
very appropriate, I guess.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, the museums I think would be interesting. I couldn't do it. I would have to be very careful not to do it on a display that is there at the moment and that, could go away soon. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a problem everywhere is you have to find some permanence.
right.
It can't be something that's going to disappear. And this is one of the risks of using a place that you don't know well, because you might not realize that that statue is a temporary statue if you don't. And I bring this up because Royal Oak does have a bunch of cool statues. And I know that the artwork or sculptures, I should say, not statues, and they'll swap them out. They're there for a certain time. Most of them are actually for sale. So if you want it for your own home or for your office, more likely, you could purchase it from the artist, but they're there under one of the grants. They basically rent them, as I understand it, from the artist.
Interesting.
So, we've got, there's a Pokestop that's kind of notable called The Big Guitar, because it was like I want to say it was like a 10-foot outline of guitar, basically in aluminum. It hasn't been there for probably 3 or 4 years.
Sure.
I think by the time Pokemon started, it had been removed. And it was purchased by someone, if I remember correctly, and it's now in an office building. So if you had used that, you'd be in some serious trouble. And there was actually one that
you could modify your
it depends on what you're going to do as your adventure lab.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just using it as a location and you're telling a story, or like see, Michelle is saying, have a video link, and it's just the location, then you're fine.
I'd like you guys. Thank you. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I had considered that might be cool for your waterfront too, is doing, and this is kind of going back to what I originally got into geocaching for, put pictures of what used to be there.
Yes. The history of Tacoma started at the waterfront and moved up the hill.
Yeah. It's really the go full out history kind of thing. And then you don't have any location that you have to go to. The location is taking them to the spot where this used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can see a building or something that used to be there, sometimes not. Spokane, Washington has an adventure lab that's looking at ghost pictures. It's part of the Spocash Lab Adventure this year.
Yes.
And that's from Seabeck Tribe, Lori.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. That would be a fun one. I kind of really want to go out there, but certainly can't do it before we have to publish ours.
So I don't know if you know, Daryl, about the Spocash.
I do. We had him on the tour or on the show.
Of course. Never mind then. Yes, you knew. I was going to say they're all adventure labs this year, which I think is fabulous. So Daryl, what are you thinking for yours?
I've gone through quite a few variations, and one of the ones that I thought was interesting was somewhat taken up by another cacher. Not exactly what I wanted, but it's close enough. I can't do it. I've been working with my wife to work on hers, so she's got one of the concepts. And of course, as I've been going over this, I keep replaying what I want to do, and I really want to do something that's different in the area and challenging. So I had 2 goals in mind. One, I'd like to try to come up with a story so that it's not something that's really a history or tied. You're not necessarily looking for something that's physically there. I'm trying to come up with an experience that is the storytelling, because I've yet to do one, which makes it that much more challenging. But that's what I'm really looking to do this time. And to make it even tougher, I want to try to do a linear experience in storytelling, because that's where, to me, it makes the most sense, where it does make sense and you don't feel like you're being led around at the whim of the author, the creator.
It's true.
So I have a concept in downtown Royal Oak that really gelled off of the sculpture by Marshall Fredericks that's in the front, essentially, of the library.
Okay.
There they call it the Star Dream. I've seen it referred to as freedom of the human spirit or something similar to that, a few different variants. But the sculptor had his studio in Royal Oak, lived in Birmingham, so he's a local Michigan folk who has long since passed away. But he has a ton of sculptures in Birmingham. And I had done a cider tour down there, if you remember cider.
Oh, back in the old days.
Yeah. So I had done a cider tour of the sculptures in Birmingham that he had created. Well, he's also got one of those statues, which was the icon in the Flushing Meadows 64-65 World's Fair.
Mm. You know, those ships up there were real. I saw it in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, and the whole thing was the cover for the new immigration program. In any case, so my concept became, I want to do the story of this fictional, like, city planner or someone who works for Royal Oak and has an affinity for I shouldn't say an affinity, but the he had the desire to make Royal Oak an international destination by having his own World's Fair in the city. And come on, he's going to go and do it better than Robert Moses did. You know, I know Robert Moses didn't quite make it. You know, his whole thing was a financial failure, but we're going to do it right this time. We're going to get the press and we're going to make it happen. And we're going to have our first World's Fair in the US in, 40 years or whatever it is. I think it's longer than that. I think the Seattle was the last US World's Fair.
Could be.
I can't remember. In any case, we're going to go do this. And look, we even have the statue from Flushing Meadows to carry on the spirit and go around and try to put together all of the venues that he's going to use and end up at what they use as the stage for the big festival that they hold once a year in town called Art Beats and Eats. So it's just a parking lot, but it's the stage area where they hold the free concerts, which aren't actually free because you pay to get into the festival, but so it's, use the actual things that are there as inspiration. And I did a video on the personal channel if anyone wants to go and actually see these locations. I did the whole scouting this weekend and did a video while I was over there, so you can get a kind of feel for this. And I'm anxious to hear what people actually think of pulling something like this off, because I worry that this is not going to be something that is really compelling and is just going to come off kind of dumb when you try to do it. But I really want to give this a shot and see if I can make this work. So I think this is what I'm going to try to do. And one of the reasons that I wanted to do it is the linear experience that ends in that parking lot is now you're at the edge of the downtown area where I might be able to come up with a spot that I could hide a bonus cache.
Oh. By the way,
so everything kind of dovetails together.
The 84 World's Fair in New Orleans was the last one in the US.
That's right. I totally forgot about that one. That one almost made a profit, as I recall.
Almost.
Well, the fairs almost never really turn a profit.
Right. Well, they're not. Yeah, they're not designed to do that.
They're advertising machines, So yeah, that's my concept. What are your thoughts on that?
I love that idea. I love the story aspect of it. More than just, hey, here's an interesting point. Here's another interesting point, right? And that's some of mine would just be that. Somebody said GXM times two says, how many geocachers would spend any time at the museums? More of a cash and dash.
Yeah, that's very true.
And by your story, Daryl, you would have people stop. And I think that would engage them to not necessarily even see what's there, but see what could be there.
Well, and I do have all, I've really turned it into a quick walking tour of some of the more interesting places.
Mhm.
And I've narrowed it down to the point where there's only 5 places that I could do it. So that's one of the things that worries me. The first one is the park with the statue. The second one is going to be kind of walking along the way, taking you to a just open air park that has no real value to it, but it's a cool little place right near where we hold most of our bubble tea events.
Interesting. Okay.
So I kind of wanted that park just because it's there. And one of the cool things in this park is it was designed as a park for the digital age. They have outlets in lampposts with the USB and the AC, so you can, the whole concept originally, and they didn't get enough funding for it, had been have enough power outlets, have Wi-Fi, so the kids could come out after school, sit in the park, and do their homework.
Interesting.
So it ended up just being kind of a cool little park with, the ripply grass and a few tables. They have the shipping containers that are cut open. One of them is parking for for bikes. So if you're biking downtown, you go and lock up your bike in this nice sheltered area. It has a nice little cubby hole in the end of another shipping container that at one point housed a piano so that people could, jam. It's just a nice little.
That's what people want to do.
It's just a nice little funny park in the middle of downtown Royal Oak. So yeah, I kind of wanted to show it to people because if you don't run through it that way, you might not realize it's there, and you certainly wouldn't check it out because it's tucked back in there. And then we're going to go across the street to the Royal Oak Music Theater, down the street a little bit more, and you hit the Baldwin Theater, which is the stage performances, versus a Royal Oak, which is music. Then we take them all the way out to the community college parking lot, which is where they do the performances for the Art Beats and Eats. So that's my goal. It's probably a little bit more than a mile of walking, which I have to actually go and map out. I did have some other locations in mind, including one that when I started to think about it a little bit, didn't seem appropriate. There's a cool old like WPA post office, which in 91, I believe it was the site of the shootings that really coined the term going postal.
Yeah.
To me, if this were a history tour, I definitely put it in there. Being a kind of irreverent story, it seemed grossly inappropriate, and I decided not to do it.
Now, Daryl, would your story be in the form of video or text?
This is what really gets me. And because of that Halloween deadline, I'm going to have to do just text. But I had come down to...
Always update it later.
I could, and that's kind of what I was thinking. Coon and Buzz says, Pokemon Go stops and gyms in this park. There are Pokestops and gyms all over Royal Oak. So, for the people who do Pogo, they'll be having a field day because it will be constant busy.
Okay, Daryl, this brings up another point that I've always wondered.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to cut you off. I just had a thought.
No, you're not.
As you're doing an adventure, say you're doing one of mine, and I lead you to these different spots. Well, I know there are geocaches there. Should I point out, oh, by the way, you're right near GC XYZ?
Yeah, I keep thinking about that kind of stuff myself. My impression is no, because again, if that goes missing, now you have to update your adventure lab. And how do you know that it's gone missing? And you could put it on a watch list, but now you're constantly updating. And
At the time of publication, the cache is right here.
yeah, and my thought is, I'm just going to reference, in the header, in the opening sequence, this is what it is. But getting back to the video thing.
Yes, please.
My thought to make this at all possible was I'm going to possibly, if I can come up with the time and everything to make it work, do this as a vlog style, first person talking to the camera. So here's this ultra excited, very self-involved, fictitious city planner talking to his iPhone. Hey, I've got to document this because this is going to be legendary. This is going to take over the world. This is going to be my legacy. So I have to record it for you and have everything in those videos talking about the location. You have to listen to it to get the answers and then move on to the next stage. I think that could be really entertaining.
I think it would be.
I don't know I can pull it off. Pulling that off in less than 4 weeks is not really an option.
Pshaw, Daryl, you could pull that off in an afternoon and be done with it.
Yeah, I could probably pull it off in an afternoon once I have it written. Or if I were a better ad libber. Yeah, I can, as we all know, expound on shows like this with, actual stuff, for hours. That's not a problem. But making something that's more concise, it's not going to be as reality based.
Factual,
yeah. That's going to be a little bit more effort, and I'm going to have to do a script. I'm going to have several takes to make it work, especially because I want it to be that one shot talking to the camera, probably the walk and talk. It's not going to be so easy.
Right.
But I really want to make that work. In the meantime, I'm going to start with the text version of that, probably hit publish on that and see where it goes. If I have the time, I'm definitely going to try to get that video in there.
Now, I know you can edit the locations once they're published. You can actually move them. There's no reviewers for it, so there's no stopping you from saying if I do the museums and one museum's closed for a year for refurbishing, I can edit that waypoint, move it somewhere else. I call it a waypoint. It's not. It's a location.
Yeah, it's a point of interest, waypoint, whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of names for it, but yeah, the location in where I go is more than just the actual, geographic location. It's all of the questions and everything. But I haven't even gotten into the builder yet.
Okay.
So I've yet to figure it out. And one of my big concerns is if I'm going to change it, you can't stage a version 2 and push it out. So you don't have any ability to, okay, I'm replacing this with a newer version. I need to test it and push it. You're just going to have to push it and hope that everything's right.
But you could push one stage at a time.
Yeah. But if you're doing that, it probably isn't going to be as good an experience. So that's where I'm going with it. Write in and let us know what you think of these ideas, and what adventure labs you found that are really good, that had you think, or your experiences putting out your adventure labs, because obviously we need some help. GeoGearheads at cachemaniacs.com. Again, that's GeoGearheads at cachemaniacs.com.
Daryl, this was a very enlightening show for me.
So did you have any change in your thinking about what you're going to end up doing, or maybe even solidify the thoughts on what you will actually publish?
Did it solidify? No, it brought up more options that maybe are not helpful, because I might have to delay it a little longer to figure this out.
See, and that's the problem that we keep running into this. There's at some point you have to lock it in and actually start producing, at least to make that December 15th deadline, but to make that Halloween deadline is going to be that much tougher.
Mm-hmm. And we're just a month away from that deadline.
Yeah, exactly. We're like right there. So like the museum ones, I love that concept, but I worry, is that going to be too much travel for someone to do for an adventure lab? The reconciliation part, the Chinese reconciliation part, sounds amazing, especially if you do that as the story of, like one of the laborers. That's going to be a fascinating use of the technology, and done well could certainly be one that GCHQ points to as a, here's what the technology can do. And this is, teaching a lesson and an entertaining story.
Wet Coaster brought up an excellent point. He says, I went to the heritage portion of the City of Surrey website to get inspiration for my adventure lab.
Yeah, and that's what I had done kind of with the cider tour that I had done on the Frederick statues. They actually have a brochure that you can download and print and do your own walking tour. It is a wealth of information. So something else to check out. The city in which Renee is going to put hers used to have a walking tour like that.
Okay.
I can't find it anymore. I wish I had saved it, but I didn't. So, a lot of that information is gone, but it's an easy place to get the information to set up your history tours. This is really an excellent tool for doing those kind of history walks, those art walks. And someone mentioned the pub crawls. Anything you want to do like that, it's a great way to get people out there with short little bits of history. The videos are amazing. Think about all of these different options, but we're not full-time Adventure Lab creators. So fitting all of this in the free time can be kind of challenging. So for now, we have to make it achievable. So little smaller bites, I guess. That's what I worry about most with mine.
I can see that. Yeah. I might take some of your ideas, Daryl.
Oh, by all means, anyone who wants to take my ideas, please do. I'd love to see this kind of stuff. However, please don't take Royal Oak, because, I don't want to have to.
I'm going to. I can play without even being there.
You absolutely could.
That's kind of part of the problem.
Chris Bruce says, in other words, folks, don't be afraid to spend some time designing our adventure series. Research can be your friend. Yes. Hey, and to that note as well, one of the spots that I really wanted to use, I kind of knew that it wasn't going to work. In part, there was a statue that I wanted to reference that I wasn't sure if it was going to be there or not. It was a Rosie the Riveter tribute statue. And I figured with the references to the 64-65 Flushing Meadows World's Fair, tying back to that would have been cool. But it's also way too busy an area during the daytime that it really, and it's out of the way. It really didn't make sense to drop it in there anyway. So great. But again, make sure you do your research to, check on this stuff and get a feel for if stuff is going to be there or not. Because if you're referencing something like a statue, it needs to be there.
Exactly. Or, Daryl, you can pull the video in, right? And use that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I really love about there used to be a term for it. It probably still is, but we're using like the pictures as a window into time. I would love to be able to pull something like that off. And if I had more time, I could work with one of the historic societies, get through their archives and pick up things like, hey, there's one of the spots in downtown Detroit that I hung out quite a bit for a couple of summers, was a speakeasy, a jazz speakeasy during Prohibition. And there were some amazing photos of it that Field Trip had picked out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right next to, I shouldn't say right, it's about a block away, the Detroit Institute of Arts. And kind of kitty corner from the Detroit Institute of Arts is the Detroit Historic Museum. Right around the corner, the Center for Creative Studies. And right nearby is also Wayne State University. So they call it the Cultural Center for good reason. It's like there's so much there that you could play with. Imagine posting all of these great things from Detroit's history. And again, did you know that Detroit had made a bid for the Olympics in the 60s?
No, I did not.
So how much fun would it be to do an adventure lab around that? And again, it's on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever want to check it out, their film that they did was pretty amazing, especially seeing what the city was like in the early 60s before the riots that absolutely decimated the city.
Mm-hmm.
And to see the difference between then and now, you start going back and doing that window into time thing, would really be a lot of fun. And I would really like to do something like that as well. So if I get my second adventure lab, that's probably what I'm going to try to do.
I think I might do an alternative history type.
See, and that would be amazing too.
What would happen if, this event did or didn't happen?
Well, and one of my favorite shows was the first couple of seasons of Man in the High Castle.
Mm-hmm.
You could do something very much like that, and it would just be so mind-bendingly trippy if it's done well. Yeah, it's the in the Matrix kind of moments.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'd love to do those, but again, it's going to take some work. And it's a very different kind of process than goes into most geocache creations. Not to say that there's not overlap, because there certainly is. If you're creating a really good puzzle, if you're creating a good gadget cache, this all dovetails together in storytelling. So there's a lot of synchronicity in that.
Ooh, I like that.
And you keep hearing the stories about the people who actually did adventure labs with gadgets.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how much fun you could have with gadgets, gadget caches at these locations. Or like Chris Bruce says, or where I go. A lot of this stuff applies to the where I go as well.
Or where I go is the words that come out of MC3 Cat's mouth the most. You could do that, or where I go. Yeah. Yeah. But you could do this, or where I go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you have a lot more freedom in a where I go than you do in the adventure lab.
Yeah.
However, it's not as accessible. So that's one of the fears I have of doing the where I go is, if you do it, will they come? Mm-hmm. An adventure lab, I think that's true. in this area, I suspect that a Where I Go would actually get it. We do have a lot of people doing Where I Goes. So we've been talking and expounding on Adventure Labs for over 50 minutes now.
Well, Daryl, some of that was 80s TV commercials.
Which we should turn into an Adventure Lab.
Ooh. I could take you to the old Highland appliances. They're gone now, aren't they?
They are long gone.
Thought so.
But I actually thought about doing that. We had Fredder and Highland Appliance that were duking it out for a while out here.
Mm-hmm.
And a few other electronic stores. How cool would it be to take people to the old locations, if they were in close enough proximity, of these defunct stores, these iconic chains? You could do it at malls with the anchor stores that are closing like crazy.
Yeah. Well, some of the anchor stores that have closed in our mall have been torn down.
Yeah. And some of them are being turned into like Amazon fulfillment centers.
Yes.
Others are being turned into like hospitals. But in almost every case, they're tearing down those anchor stores. But again, you could take them to that location and play the commercial for that store during its heyday.
Yeah, baby cakes.
Imagine going to like Macy's stores and playing Thanksgiving Day parades.
One day only at the Bon Marché. That was one of our commercials around here.
I remember that one vaguely.
Hey, oh. So anyway, sorry.
But there's so much great stuff that you could do with these. We are not even scratching the surface. And I'm sure the more you put out and the more creative you get, the more creative you're going to want to get with them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Land Monkey's Adventure Lab has a video at each stage, which is no less than I would expect from the Land Monkey.
Yes, of course. But see, for him, making a video is like breathing, or like MC3 Cat saying, or Where I Go.
Wow.
Sorry, MC3 Cats. I owe you an apology.
Probably for Land Monkey as well.
No.
No? Okay. Land Monkey needs no apology. All right. With that, why don't we wrap it up? We would like to get your feedback, though. So let us know at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. Again, that's geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. And then another note is that next week is going to be our randomized show. So, you got less than a week to get that feedback into us, because that's where we're going to put it in. But we'll have some cool articles and stuff too. And, I just came across one today that I added to the list, Chris.
Oh, detail.
That's kind of interesting. I don't want to say too much because I still haven't read the article. But it's one of those weird, cool Japanese gaming kind of things. We'll leave it at that. And it's gone, which kind of is disturbing.
That is a shame.
So it fits into the Lost Places theme. Anyway, so get those comments, any of the story articles that you can share with us at geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com. But we have to have those in by about the 29th to make sure that they can fit into the show. And especially because next week I'm going to have a lot going on for work and not a whole lot of time for prep. Oh, boy. Pre-COVID days were so much less crazy. So check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the Geo Gearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cachemaniacs.com or through social media. Your support helps keep the Cachemaniacs shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniacs shows. Geo Gearheads is produced by Chris Sufenauer and Daryl Wanberg. This show is copyright 2020 by Daryl Wanberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with a Cachemaniac.